Mock Draft Monday, and only 2 quarterbacks go in the first round of Ryan Wilson's latest mock. Kenny Pickett, 13 to the Saints. Matt Corral, 8th to the Panthers. That's it. That's all the quarterbacks. The Lions still a game up on everybody for that number 1 pick with 4 games to play. And once again, it's Aiden Hutchinson, the Heisman runner-up, going number 1 to Detroit in Ryan's latest mock. He's got a couple of offensive linemen going to the Giants at 5 and 6. Let's get Ryan Wilson in here, along with Brady Quinn and Danny Cannell. I'm Chris Hassell. Ryan, looking at this mock draft, you've had as many as, I think, 4 quarterbacks go in your first round, sometimes 3. This week, just 2. Why is that?
Yeah, usually 3. I had 4 go last week, and Malik Willis slipped in to the bottom of the first round with that pick that the Lions have down there. 2 this week, and for a couple reasons, Chris. So Tyrod Taylor was benched in Houston. They're going to roll with Davis Mills there. You would presume that if he plays decently, and he had a pretty good showing early on yesterday, that maybe they'll give him the opportunity next week, or next season, excuse me. And if that's the case, and they have this top 5 pick that they're currently sitting on, maybe they go in another direction. And this time around, I haven't taken Kayvon Thibodeau, who has, for the first month and a half of the mock draft season, at least for me, been going number 1 overall. We know how Aiden Hutchinson played so well this season, and you mentioned the 2nd overall in voting for the Heisman. And then the Panthers have a quarterback at 8, and that's where we see Matt Corral first go off the board. I've had him going number 2 typically in recent weeks, so he slips to 8. The Panthers need offensive line help, but you look right above there, 3, 4 offensive linemen go right before the Panthers pick, so maybe they go with the quarterback, even though I know that Sam Darnold, is going to have to come back on that big money deal next year. That doesn't mean he should play. And then finally at 13, and this might be the best pick by the time this is all said and done, the Saints end up with Kenny Pickett. And we say this every week when we talk. Landing spot is so incredibly important. There are a few better landing spots than New Orleans. Sean Payton, a really good offensive line, a great defense, and the chance that Michael Thomas might come back for you. A great landing spot for a quarterback. After that, Carson Strong, who I had going almost every week. The knee's going to be an issue, and that's just the reality of it. I know some teams have already taken him out of the first round. And then Malik Willis, who I mentioned, I don't think he's a first-round player right now. High upside guy, and if you take him, should be at the bottom of the first round with the understanding that he needs time to grow into that role.
Yeah, kind of interesting, though, only seeing 2. I do think there's a chance of that. You know, this is not as strong of a class as a lot of people, or at least what we've seen in recent years. So that's something to be concerned by. But in regards to the 2 you've got going, I think both these guys can end up going higher than this purely because if you look at the top of the draft right now, the Lions, they may want to make a move or just say, we're willing to trade out of this spot if you find a quarterback that you love because we need that much help out around it. The Jaguars probably willing to say the same thing. They've got their quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. I don't know that they'll stay put. I think you could see some teams trading up into those spots to give up something before Matt Corral or Kenny Pickett. Bottom line is, both these 2 guys I could see going first. In my opinion, it's going to be Pickett. But look, Ron, as you pointed out, if Pickett ends up going to the Saints, that's a match made in heaven. And I think it might even be enough to entice a guy like Michael Thomas to come back to play with a guy like Kenny Pickett who can sling it downfield. And there's going to be a lot of things that he likes playing with a guy like that. So, DK, I know I hate it's only 2 quarterbacks in it, but that may be the reality for what this year's draft holds for the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think it's probably the more likely scenario. Like, if the odds maker said it at 2.5 quarterbacks in the first round, I'd probably take the under, although there's always that temptation to jump in the back end just to get the extra year on the rookie contract. But as far as these 2 situations, I would be concerned for Matt Corral in Carolina. I mean, they just fired Joe Brady. They're willing to do, hey, let's bring back Cam Newton. Sam Darnold's been a little bit of a mess. Like, yeah, from a getting to play early, that might be a great option. But in a franchise, we're still trying to figure out their identity. I mean, Matt Rule, there's rumors about him maybe wanting to go to the college game. It just seems a little bit of a mess in Carolina with the Panthers, where if Kenny Pickett, and we've talked about him potentially going to the Steelers and Pittsburgh, I think it's a great situation. If he happened to go to the Saints, I think that's a great situation to pair him with an offensive mind and Sean Payton. And I'm not a believer in Taysom Hill as the long-term answer at quarterback, but at least you've got somebody who must be a great locker room guy with the amount of money they've committed to him, who can help you, be that shoulder to lean on and kind of be that extra coach and those extra set of eyes on the sideline, some veteran leadership. And even Jameis, if they keep Jameis Winston around to compete, that would be another one while he's there, rehabbing. I think that's another pretty good mind to glean off of, as he's been through a lot in his career. I'd love that situation for Kenny Pickett. So it's almost one of those years where if you're not a top 5, top 10 pick, you might be in a better situation going middle to the back half of the first round, being on a better team like Mac Jones is enjoying right now with the New England Patriots.
Danny just loves it because he's an ACC quarterback. He's always pumping up his ACC QBs.
Oh, Danny, you got to have something, right? You don't get the wins, you don't get the college football playoffs this year, but you get your quarterback who might be going in the first round. By the way, you got to go back 20 years the last time there were less than 2 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I think it was Michael Vick, number 1, and then nobody else the rest of the way back in 2001. 5 years ago, we had 2 taken in the first round. Let's move on to the rest of this here from Ryan Wilson, his mock draft on CBSSports.com. Bunch of offensive linemen, 8 offensive linemen, Ryan, in the first round. How about the Giants? What would the reaction be, you think, from Giants fans if they went back-to-back with offensive linemen 5 and 6?
It's funny you asked that, Chris, because I got some stern words via text message and face-to-face from some CBS Sports HQ co-workers in Stamford, Connecticut. I won't name names, Scott Rowley, Robert Serio, who insisted that I not give them a defensive back, a safety, a cornerback. They need offensive. And in fact, here's the quote. We want what the 2006 Jets did when they took the Brickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold. So I said, okay, there you go. You get Charlie Cross and you get Tyler Linderbaum, the best center in this draft class. And he could end up being one of the best offensive linemen. I know that's high for a center. Centers haven't gone higher than 18th in the last since 2010, and only 3 of those guys did that. So that's a huge ask. But I think that the takeaway here is that I'm easily convinced to do things other people want me to do. But the reality is that the Giants need offensive line help desperately, and there's no 2 ways about it. They need help up and down the roster. I don't know what the fate is going to be for the GM and the head coach in New York, but the offensive line is in shambles, and if Daniel Jones is going to be your guy next year, and it's fair to assume that he will be, why not protect him? Now, you're passing on guys like Stingley and Hamilton, and those are decisions you have to make. But again, and we say this every week, if you're going to have a young quarterback, whether it's a rookie or a second, third-year guy, you got to protect him. And Daniel Jones has had very little in the way of protection during his NFL career. And he's currently injured because of the so many hits he's taken.
I'll say this. I wish I got as many excuses as Daniel Jones gets and had that long of a leash. Like, he's been up and down. And yes, there's been reasons behind it every time. Like, you lose Saquon forever. And it's like, oh, his running back, his generational running back's not healthy. His offensive line, oh, there's a bad offensive line. That happens to a lot of quarterbacks. You got to figure your way through. But if you are going to stick with Daniel Jones, I do agree with the philosophy of building from the inside out and giving him some protection and even trying to get that ground game going more to take some of that load off his shoulders. And you mentioned the fact that we haven't seen a center taken that high. Tyler Linderbaum, to me, is the best offensive lineman in this class. I mean, you watch the film and it just blows you away. His versatility, his ability to direct traffic up front. And I'm sure our buddy Chris Hassell, is the Iowa Hawkeye guy, has enjoyed watching him play as well. I think the center, too, is the most important position because you have to direct so much traffic and you are the communicator up front. And I know those tackles, block off the edge, but I think there's an incredible value in getting a center in there to kind of, and it's a lot of times the offensive line takes on the personality of the center. It's usually the vocal leader up there as he does most of the talking for him too. So I think Tyler Linderbaum would be an outstanding choice for the Giants. And if they go 2 offensive linemen, let's go build up the interior so you can give Daniel Jones a chance. And hopefully you give him this much time though, man, he better have a breakout season. Like, we've seen flashes. He's got to start doing it over the longer haul.
I'll tell you exactly why Ryan Wilson has 8 offensive linemen of the 32 picks in this mock. It's because it's the holiday season. And, as he's continued to eat like an offensive lineman would, he maybe feels like he's putting on a few extra
Are you
LBs.
calling Ryan fat?
I'm not calling him fat. I'm just saying he might have identified himself a little bit this week as an offensive lineman and said, you know what? I need to sprinkle in some more offensive linemen throughout this mock draft. So, look, I love what you've done, all right? I think it's look, the most skillful thing you can do is move another man against his will. And that's what these offensive linemen are tasked with doing. And I think it's harder and harder to find guys you can draft and plug in right away and play. Tyler Linderbaum is that guy. I would not be shocked if they didn't go with that exact pick because of his ability, not only at the point of attack, but also getting up to the second level. It's one of the more underrated things that offensive linemen, especially interior players, are asked to do. And he does a tremendous job of doing that. We talked about how he directs traffic and everything else. He runs an NFL system, too, up there at Iowa. So wouldn't be shocked if they went that direction, at least with one of their picks there. I do think the other one might be devoted, though, to the trenches on the defensive line. Whether that's an edge player or an interior player, I think they were hoping their defense would be better than it was this year. Wouldn't be shocked if they didn't go with one of the better talents at that spot. But, Ryan, I love what you've done. And again, maybe because the holiday eating and everything else going on, I love what you've done, though, putting in all these offensive linemen. They deserve more praise and more credit for what they've done and what they do.
Ryan's shot.
Sharp eye, Brady. I have gained 5 pounds, so there's that.
Your shot gets us in the holiday spirit. I think of all and no disrespect to Danny. I love your shots behind you as well. Your great camera setup. But those trees, I think you got like a 4K camera in there. He's got the sweater on. I mean, I'm ready for Christmas break right now.
It's a clear camera.
It's a what?
It's a great camera.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what they did there, but Danny, you need that at your place. Let's move on to playmakers here. Only 2 quarterbacks in the first round. No wide receivers in the first half of the first round. But they come hot and heavy there late in the first round, Ryan.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. In recent years, we've talked up all these wide receivers, and they end up getting pushed down. That didn't happen last year, obviously, with Jamar Chase, and he's been as good as advertised. But then what happens this time around? We have some wide receivers going off the board. It starts at number 18 with the Browns. They get Garrett Wilson, who is my wide receiver 1 as we sit here, and it's pretty close. And the other thing is, these guys are close now. As we saw, Justin Jefferson was a 5th wide receiver taken. These things can certainly change. And then Washington gets Jameson Williams, who has had a breakout season for Alabama. Washington has other needs, and quarterback could be on this list. But when you're picking this far down as we sit here, a lot of the guys are gone. We talk about offensive linemen. We talk about the quarterbacks that could be available. Curtis Samuel hasn't really done much this year. We know what Terry McLaurin can do. He needs help. Logan Thomas had that ACL injury, so he's going to be out for a while. Drake London is one of my favorite players in the wide receiver group. The Eagles, do they desperately need wide receivers? Not really. Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor, but they're going to have a lot of guys' contracts up at wide receiver position, and if they have the quarterback situation sorted with Jalen Hurts, and we don't know that yet, then obviously get him more weapons. And I'll mention one last name, Chris Olave there at the bottom, number 30. I don't know if he lasts this long, but we'll see. This is a lot of wide receivers going round 1. Maybe Aaron Rodgers finally gets a first-round quarterback, wide receiver. Maybe that convinces him to stay, as well as Devontae Adams. Those are all a bunch of big ifs. And the Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since 2002, Javon Walker. So this could be a chance to make up for lost time, so to speak.
This is such a talented class of wide receivers. I mean, you have a hard time picking wrong, in my opinion, at least with this group and what we just showed on the screen. And a lot of those teams, too, could use them. I think most teams feel like if you're playing a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, we're going to have to start, drafting these guys in particular high and being able to use them a lot of that run life they've got going on right now. So I love what you've done. Does Garrett Wilson go number 1 overall or as far as the first wide receiver taken? I don't necessarily know that, and I'm not so sure that we don't see some wide receivers go higher than this. I think at the end of the day, Jameson Williams might end up stealing the show because he's going to run a fast 40, and when you put on the game tape of that young man, he is blazing fast. I mean, he just separates from anyone he's around. The Blitnikoff finalist, one of the best in the country, really burst on the scene after he transferred from Ohio State. So it will be exciting to see where he ends up and the impact that he has at the next level. It's all about separation, and Jameson Williams can do that as good as anyone.
Brady, you must have been reading my notes because I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, first of all, I do think 18 is incredibly low for the first receiver to be taken. I bet, you would put the number on that. I would absolutely say a wide receiver gets drafted ahead of that. The other one is think about the talent that they had at Ohio State when Jameson Williams was there and wasn't playing enough, so he decides to go out of Alabama. And Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, all of this talent was in one receiver room. And don't think that Jameson Williams wouldn't like to look at this and be like, okay, I left Ohio State. Now I went to Bama. I have this breakout season. I want to show you guys that you guys made one, just prove it one more time. You guys made a mistake, like not playing me enough. So I'm going to go show you by what I did this season, but also becoming the first wide receiver off the board. And it is explosive. There is a difference when you watch him play. He's got another gear. All these guys are going to be solid, all these receivers that we're talking about, but there does seem to be another gear, and we know how it works at the combine. We know how it works at pro days. When you throw down a 40, and it's the fastest of the class, which I do think he has an outstanding chance of getting, that one usually tends to resonate with the scouts. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jameson Williams is the first overall, or not the first wide receiver taken in the first round.
All right, let's move on to the Cowboys. I heard Danny say earlier, and I'm just paraphrasing, but something like Micah Parsons is a mix between Lawrence Taylor and Jesus Christ himself. So let's find out who the Cowboys are taking this year in the first round.
Yeah, and, their defense has played so incredibly well this year that it feels sort of weird to say this, and it feels even weirder when we talk about Micah Parsons, who was drafted as an off-ball linebacker, and they're going to draft in the first round Devin Lloyd, the off-ball linebacker out of Utah. But Micah Parsons, as you guys have been talking about, is playing on the edge, and he's dominating. He's dominating in a way that we haven't seen from a rookie edge rusher, particularly one who hadn't played the position since high school. So, if one Micah Parsons is good, let's get another 60% of Micah Parsons and Devin Lloyd. Let him play the off-ball position and go from there. They're going to be losing some guys in the middle of that defense come free agency. They're not going to be able to sign them all. We know you have Trevon Diggs in the back end. D-Law is playing well up front. He had a good game yesterday. And you have Micah Parsons up front as well. Just keep building that defense, which, again, it sounds odd to say given how well they played. And even odder is that the offense is suddenly struggling in Dallas. But I don't think you're not going to draft a running back. You're not going to draft a quarterback, obviously. The offensive line is pretty good when healthy. I like Devin Lloyd here to bolster the center of that defense.
I tell you what, it's be a scary thought, too, for everybody that's facing the Dallas Cowboys. If pair him with Micah Parsons, those two on the same defense. And they've spent a lot of draft capital. They spent a lot of salary cap capital on the offensive side of the ball. Go with the youth movement on the defensive side of the ball. It worked with Micah Parsons. And Devin Lloyd is a player. You had him in here, Ryan, a few weeks ago going 32nd, last pick of the first round. And I think he's going to continue to climb up the boards here as a player who flies around. He makes plays. He's second in the Big 12 in sacks. He gets plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's explosive, can run really well. I think this is a player that's going to be a long-time NFL player, and I love where you have him going here to Dallas. This is a team that could really bolster that defense, which has already been one of the surprises this year.
You know what this is? This is a luxury for the Dallas Cowboys, right? You end up drafting a guy who you think is going to be your off-the-ball backer, and you luck into the fact you find out, he may actually be able to play on the edge, and maybe one of the best players off the edge playing at that position. So let's just go right back into the draft and find the next best off-the-ball backer in Devin Lloyd, who also happens to be good at rushing the opposing quarterbacks when he's blitzing or playing off the edge. So both these players would be dynamite playing next to one another. DK talked about all the capital spent on the offense. Why not then draft then defensively? It's a great strategy, and it works in part because those guys play defense. You can insert them a little bit better. Trust me, their playbook is a lot smaller than the offensive side's playbook. So you can stick those guys, they'll plug in and play right away, especially in Dan Quinn's scheme, the job he does getting those guys coached up. I love this pick. I think it would make a lot of sense. He's a day one starter, and those two together are going to be that linebacker combination that the Dallas Cowboys have been looking for quite some time. I'm not sure it's going to be exactly Jesus Christ and Lawrence Taylor, as Chris just mentioned a moment ago.
Well, those were Danny's words.
Oh, sorry. That was the combination of Danny's. It'll be pretty close to that, those two playing together.
Danny, Ryan, thank you so much for the time. Brady as well. Ryan will be with us again next Monday with a brand new mock draft. First round, anyway. It's going to be a little bit before we get him into the second and third round. Baby steps during the season. Baby steps. Pick Six podcast hosted by Will Brinson. Ryan Wilson is on with him on today's show along with John Breach, talking about what we saw yesterday, and they'll dive deep on that Jacksonville situation, which is not pretty right now.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.